the Thursday night edition of The Outer Realm, right here on United Public Radio. We're thrilled that you can all join us tonight. Yay. So we are broadcasting live here on, like I said, United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM and 105.3 from the beautiful city of New Orleans. You guys have to get to the YouTube page. It's the only place you're going to have the chat room. You're going to want to be in it. We're not going to be able to see any of your comments or questions otherwise. So get over to the station, United Public Radio Network. I'm going to say it again, to the YouTube page, subscribe, get into the chat room. Please note that tonight's segment is partially sponsored by the amazing folks over at Folgers Coffee. Thank you, Folgers. We love you. We appreciate you. And we really, really dig you. Anyway.
Absolutely. Just one thing, Joe, if you're listening, you've got the wrong promo on the front of the show.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Come on. You're just a naughty Joe.
Yep. Yeah. We've got Dr.
Kathleen Ann Ball, which I mean, she won't mind, but it's definitely not the one we want. We love you.
Yeah.
Checking, please.
We do.
Yes, you have to get on the other one. Do you need us to be sent to you again?
What the hell? How did I get up there? All right, let me change it. Go ahead.
I don't know, but switch that stuff up, man. Come on. So.
Good thing I don't use it for my link.
Oh my gosh, honestly. But anyway, okay, I'm going to get into chat right now, and I'm going to be all watching you. Hello, Zach man. How's it going? And I will approve.
I love him.
He's a doll. We appreciate your support too, just so you know. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to go in here and approve this on my Facebook so people can get in there and watch live also. So pretty excited about tonight's show. We have Dr. Vicki Monroe, just saying, and she's just really delightful. I've been, dealing with her a couple of times, and she's just such a sweetheart. And I always say to people, okay, it's how we're starting, man, humble beginnings. And she's just, I don't think I'd know how to be any other way. I'm like, I love you. Adorable. So, and then we have a little bit of a surprise coming on a little bit later in the show, and that will be a lot of fun too. So we've got a repeat guest who we've had on the show, and she's going to kind of come in and do a little sneaking in, because she and Vicki are really good friends. So you're just going to have to stay tuned for the second hour and see who said mystery guest will be. So anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to getting the show on the road. And Cadillac Glider, Supernatural Thursday. Hell yeah, there we go. I like that. That's a spirit.
I know, I love that coin. I just wanted to make mention of next week for Wednesday, just to prep our listeners. If you're listening in, that next week we're going to have a guest from the UK. Mm-hmm. So make sure you put that down and look for the promo and his banner to read all about him, because he's being kind enough to come on live at 2 a.m. his time, just for us. So look for it on our Facebook page or on our Instagram.
And we'll announce that at the end of tonight's segment also. So that will be good, I think. So we're just waiting on Vicki to come on board, and then we can get going. And I just got dinged. Who just dinged me? God, I don't like that. Okay, there we go. It's a grocery store. Freshest deals are here. Yeah. My emails. I was like, all right, right on.
I'm not going there to see them, but yeah.
I know. They keep sending it to you.
I haven't been to one in a year.
I know. We're essential services. I'm like, okay, good. And you get in there and you see like a million people in line. It's like,
I sent John.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh,
I haven't been in a year. I just
hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, God. We just saw the number pop up on the screen. We're like, where'd that voice come from?
We had no idea.
No.
Hi, Vicki. I'd love to just give you a quick intro. Good Lord. Okay. I need coffee. Vicki Monroe is considered to be one of the world's leading psychic mediums whose gifts go beyond basic spirit messages to include spiritual counseling, criminal cold cases, my fave, investigations with a PhD in holistic healing. As you heard, the beautiful and the soft-spoken Vicki Monroe, Dr. Vicki Monroe. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, cool. We've been looking forward to it. So I got to peruse through the website again. I always try to freshen myself up when we're going to be bringing someone on. It's like, oh my gosh, it's just like, where do we start? So, but
Yeah.
where I always say, and I'm always saying humble beginnings, just
Humble beginnings is correct. Yes.
Yeah, I think so. So just
Absolutely.
I mean, some people believe we're all born gifted. Other people's like, no, something has to be developed. How did it happen for you?
Actually, I was 4 years old, and it was the day of my baptism, and I was there with 3 other siblings, and I just happened to be the very last one of the day, and I remember it being this is in California, and it's very hot and sticky, and I just, being 4, couldn't wait to get out of my seat and get the heck out of there because it was just a long day. And I went up and walked up the steps, and I noticed that when I hit the second step, that the sticky, steamy atmosphere turned very cool and almost musty. I could hear water dripping in the background. And it felt like, I could see an old well. And the gentleman that had been there, this minister that had been there that was very tall and blonde, had turned to this older gentleman. And all I can remember is that he looked like he had a friar tuck type robe on that was tied with a rope. And I walked up to him, and he had the most beautiful blue eyes, and he smiled, and there was no fear there. And I thought, well, no wonder the kids didn't mind coming up here. He's awesome. He's great. I'm sure I didn't use awesome. I was 4, but, and this was the 60s, so, I didn't use awesome. But he was just just welcoming face and expression, and he leaned over and he touched my forehead and made the cross on my forehead, which I saw the other guy do, and I assumed, like Disneyland, this is what all kids did. And he said sight. And then he did tell me, he said, and I will be visiting you from time to time.
Oh.
And I thought, well, that's great, like Pirates of the Caribbean ride, This is what it's like. So I turned around, went down the steps, and the minute I got to where my family was sitting, it was back to the hot, steamy church. And everybody got up, and we all walked out. And I remember when I got home, I told my mom, I'm telling you kind of in a very roundabout way here, quick. But I told my mother about it. She was washing dishes, and she said, oh, well, let's just not say anything about this to anybody else.
Oh, yeah, the good old family secret little bit.
But she believes me. That's one thing. She's like, hon, I believe you. I believe you. But other people probably won't. Mm-hmm. So let's keep it between you and I. And when things happen, I want you to tell me. And that's the way we left it. And then throughout my life, when things did happen, she's the one I told. Mm-hmm. So that's how it started.
I think that's great. I had a very supportive family like that also. My mother was always like, yes, go ahead and you can tell me. And, because they were used to that sort of stuff, but it's like, don't tell anybody else. It really was like the family secret, just, like everybody think you're like the weirdos on the block or something. I don't know. But so I grew up, sheltered that way. So, so.
But, the weird ones on the block now are the cool ones on the block.
I know, right? And you're just one of the cool kids, which is awesome.
Yeah, now you're like, oh, that's your mother? Wow, Well, now they don't care,
I know.
But,
and they catch you on the street.
On the block, so who cares?
But
anyway.
See you on the street. Do you see anybody with me right now? That's always the famous one. Do you see anybody with me right now?
Oh my gosh! Every time they find out that you're a medium. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Yes, I did a radio show for years. What's around me? Who's around me?
I know.
Yeah,
I always answer, you tell me.
Exactly. That's funny.
Oh my gosh. So essentially then, I mean, you were 4 years old, you discovered this ability. Did you figure out who this man was? Somebody from the church, or was he a guide? Because to say, I'm going to be popping by every now and then, that's kind of unusual.
Yeah, because he was a guide, and Blue Eyes would tell the story every time. Because when I was 10, I had scarlet fever, and I remember being isolated from my four siblings then. When we lived in Maine, we lived in a very tiny little house, and I remember when I had a very high fever, he showed up. And he just told me that I would partially lose my sight for a time. And meaning I could, and not sight of him, because I still didn't know what that was, but more of I wasn't going to be able to see. And just for like a few minutes, I couldn't. I went blind for a few minutes. And he told me not to panic about it, because it would teach me something. And at that point in time, I was freaking out, so it didn't teach me anything. But it was just to, I get it now, what he was trying to do. But, and then, he's the one that tapped me on the forehead and said, okay, you could see again. And I did. And it was just very interesting. But the sight that I had to just have it, the visual of seeing everything in the world, because I know it was because I was feeling sorry for myself because I was sick. And he was trying to tell me, what would you do if you couldn't see? And I remember him taking me to this hospital, an out-of-body experience, taking me to a hospital where he was showing me actually really ill people, very ill children, and the smiles on their faces and how they were experiencing things like this. And it made me feel like, what are you feeling sorry for? You will recover. And so it was a very deep, profound experience. And for 10, it was pretty heavy, but it was necessary. And that kind of changed everything about me seeing after that.
Yeah. Did you have something you want to ask?
Yeah.
No, Amelia, you're kind of nodding like you look like you're going to say something. So.
Oh no, because I don't want to.
We have a lag, so
that's my daughter's name, by the way.
Oh, is it?
It is. It was so bizarre when I saw that. It was in my father's family tree book, and I saw it back from coming over around the Mayflower time. I don't know when, but and there was a woman in there that was married to one of the original people that came here in 1644, and he was married to an Amelia, and I loved the name.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, I'll give you a short brief. Thank you. I'll give you a short brief answer. A reason why my mother named me that was because actually my sister's name was Amelia, and my grandmother named her because the Italian tradition is you name them after the parents, the first couple. But my grandmother hated her name, so she picked Amelia, but with an A spelling, not an E, which is typically Italian. She spelled it the British spelling instead. And I was born on March 19th at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday. My sister passed at 7 months. It was March 19th on a Thursday at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
So that's why my mother named me after her. So I'm actually named after my sister, who was named by my grandmother. But it's not in the family tree. It's actually not in my mother's side at all, which is weird.
And I named my daughter Amelia with an A.
Yes, that's how it should be spelled. Sorry, all you Italians out there. I'm not going to support you right now, but thank you.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So, I mean, okay, so 10 years old, and how do you find you were evolving? Like, at which point did you figure, you know what, it's okay to talk about this ability? Like, I was in my teens, and I'm like, screw this. This is something really cool, and I'm just going to like shout it out to the world. I don't even care. And, and it was not, I should listen to my mother. It was not well received with everyone, but some of my friends thought, oh, wow, that's really awesome. So, you know.
No, literally in high school, I tried to just focus on high school. And when I say high school, I'm not talking grades. I'm talking about my friends. I was the head cheerleader, so that was fun, social. But I actually didn't have a lot of friends. So there was just this, and I have to be completely honest. I was an oddity, somebody that people just looked at. I know that people thought I was strange, and even though I had my girlfriends, which amounted to 4 people, and I'm the only one left. They've all passed over. So I'm the only one left, including my sister, who was my best friend. She passed first, and then the rest followed her.
Sorry.
So I'm of the group. Oh, fine. Of the group, I'm the only one. But it's just interesting that even in that time, I just tried to not be that person because I just wanted to fit in. That's all. I didn't want to be the strange person because I didn't. There wasn't a lot of people to talk to about it back then. I mean, in the 80s, it just wasn't. And my mom knew only so much. Did she encourage me? Absolutely. I also had a really bad fear of scary movies and all that because I just didn't believe things were the way they made them portrayed, in these films and things like that. Like everything in my being would say, but how can you watch this? This is not the way things are. No. And I remember my dad saying to me, well, how do you know that? And I said, I just know. I just know it's not like this. And he'd say, but you could be wrong. Maybe you just don't want it to be that way. And I go, well, maybe that's true. But I just could not watch like horror films or anything like that. I just couldn't. Because from what I had seen from those on the other side, nothing looked like that to me ever. Ever. And I mean, this was in my teens. So maybe I was blessed that I didn't see that kind of thing. But I still don't see many things that are very negative.
That's
Fortunate.
On the other side. You're very fortunate.
What?
Did you?
Yes, I think I
know
mean,
you're
I've
very
seen things.
fortunate.
Yeah, I have seen things now since I've worked overseas and I've worked in Europe and I was in, I've been, one of the scariest places for me was Germany. And I was in Zurich and I've been to Switzerland. I've been everywhere and doing this job. And there have been things that were very different that I'm not used to seeing, but nothing that's ever physically harmed me. And that was a good thing.
Absolutely. With the protection. I wanted to ask you, just going back for a moment, in high school, did you feel lonely because of that, not being able to express yourself the way other teens could?
I did feel lonely.
Yeah.
And it was really, it was something like my mom used to tell me, this is just something that is yours. And, some people would understand it, some people won't. I mean, but there was no one that I felt confident enough or comfortable enough to speak to about it. Unlike today, where I have one really dear friend who I'm working with right now. She's like amazing. And who, you would think, how you meet those soul people, your tribe. You meet them.
Yeah.
Yes, actually.
Kimberly Brown is my tribe. I'm just going to say her name right out loud. She is my tribe. And and Laura DiDio, another person that is a part of that tribe that you just know. And
that's good.
But yeah, I was a very lonely person in high school. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's very difficult.
Did you have that issue, Amelia? Did you have that?
You picked up on it, did you? Yeah, absolutely. That I can pick up the same feeling, empathy wise. Sorry, I'm tongue tied today without this cough, but yeah, I just find that your life is similar to mine in some ways with that expression of, and I believe a lot of mediums in their teens who are just realizing how much they can see and what's happening are fearful. Right. I'm grateful today to the internet.
Oh yeah.
So that, and all the shows that are on television, so that these teens coming up now, there's so much, there's an awakening, not just with the kids, but with the parents. It's a different time. My mother was like your mother. You keep quiet about this. And, it was a family thing. Was it a family thing for you? Did it come from your mom's side? Yeah.
No, it came from my father's side, actually.
Really? That's
his
different. Usually, yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, his grandmother would see and talk to them. And, we'd go into her house, which was very old, very creepy, and hear the phone ring, which was disconnected. It wasn't connected. And, we would see doors open and close. And she used to tell us, oh, that's just my daughter, which was my dad's mom, who had died when he was 13. And she would visit often. And my dad used to say, in the bedrooms at night upstairs in that house, it would get below freezing in the middle of summer. And he said, you just didn't do anything. He said it would only last for a few minutes. You'd hear them come up the stairs. And he said, I never knew what they were looking for. But they always seemed to be looking for something. And it was actually, this house was the first tavern in the town. And it actually had been attacked by Native Americans.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
And it was just, there's a lot of history that goes with that property. So it's just very interesting. And now I just love going in there. It's fascinating.
Well, I mean, let's face it, everybody came in through the east for the most part, when they were coming to colonize, and your area is like highly active. I mean, just about everywhere. So, I mean, to not find some place, try to find a place that doesn't have some kind of activity.
Actually, and that's funny because I have clients that are like, well, my house is brand new. Why is it so active? I said, well, the ground is what's active.
Yes.
It's the earth itself. You don't know who's there, who's present in the earth right there. You could build a new house. It doesn't mean it won't be active. So.
I learned that when I built one. Yes.
Yeah. Well.
When did you decide to take this gift and help people? How did that happen? How did that come about?
Oh, it was on and off. I got married after high school, and we went into the military, and I just started, seeing things here and there. I mean, there's a lot of things I don't, to be honest with you, I've been doing this for 30-something years. There's a lot of things I don't even remember. But I tend to be like that. I'll do a session with somebody, and then they'll call me, a year and a half later. Oh, you did this. Do you remember me? No, I don't remember you. I just do so many that I just don't. And it's not to offend anyone. It's just I move on very quickly to, you focus on the very next case or person. But this started for me. I started having visions or dreams of, I lived in Germany, and with my husband, and at that time I had 2 little boys, and I kept having flashes of an accident or somebody just coming to me and talking to me, and I really didn't honestly think much of it. And then my brother and his then wife came to visit us on their first wedding anniversary, and that morning I woke up and I could smell perfume everywhere. Well, I have 2 little boys. I don't need any perfume. There's nothing in my house. And I could smell it everywhere. And I said to my sister-in-law, do you smell that? And she said, I do. What is that? And I said, I don't know what it is. I don't have any perfume here. And she said, it almost smells like, now mind you, this is a long time ago, Halston. And I said, I don't even know I had never heard of it. And she said, it smells like
I
heather.
did.
Oh, did you? Oh, good.
Yeah. I knew exactly what you're saying. I'm aging myself.
Yeah, so I didn't know what it was. I said, it's kind of strong, and she said, that smells like heather. The phone rang, and that was my father. So I answered, and he said, well, we lost Heather and Tom tonight. And I laughed.
Oh, my God.
And I know, stupid. And I said, what'd you do with them? It didn't even enter my mind that it was, they died in a car crash. That they were hit sideways. They were a quarter of a mile from home, and somebody had run a stop sign and hit them sideways. And if they had been going apparently 2 miles faster, they would have not been hit. But you know how things work.
Yes.
Things happen accordingly.
That's right.
And so they were hit because they were supposed to be. And so, I listened to him, and he was a hot mess, and it was awful. And that night, it was still very hard to process because they were in a different time zone, and it was just, how, and immediately you go into the stages of grieving, acceptance, I couldn't accept it. It was just that can't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be somebody else because there was a girl in the truck that hit them whose name was Heather.
Jeeps.
So it was
That's
right. And
ironic.
they found her purse and all that. And I thought, well, maybe it's not her, but it was. That night she came to my house. She was in my bedroom. She woke me up. And she looked, and the thing is, this is how, I thought she looked fabulous. I'm like, oh my God, you look so good. And she said, you should see the clothes over here. Anything you want. And so she says, come in the living room. And I said, but Chuck and Linda are in there, my brother and his wife. And she says, oh, they won't wake up. So I literally walked in there, and they're sound asleep. My dog is sound asleep. And she said, sit in the chair. And she goes, I want you to write everything down. And so I sat down, and any question that I had, they would answer. And her husband was sitting there, and they both looked fantastic. And apparently I couldn't tell you half the questions I asked, but I did write it all down, and I have it all somewhere. And I just knew then that I wasn't wrong about the afterlife. They were there. They were happy. They were amazed. They looked incredible. And they just relayed everything that I had been feeling since I was a little girl was true.
Wow. That's kind of nice to have those answers.
It was just so nice to have that feeling. And she said, and the pain will subside to the point where she says, you will miss me, but you will learn to live without me.
That's tough.
And that's true. You really do.
It is.
It's difficult.
It is difficult. There's a hole that can never be filled.
That's right.
But you learn to exist, and you realize that you have to go on. You can't live in that past. You have to keep going. And I realized, that she wanted me to. And it was the hard part too but this prepared me because I believe all things happen for a purpose. A month later, my father called me, and he was diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
So it was like I had already been through what I thought was the hardest thing I would ever go through. Losing my best friend. She was my best friend. And then realizing that, and then my husband put in for what we call a humanitarian in the military to get stationed close to home, and we actually got it. So he was given 8 months, and he ended up living 8 years and saw 2 more children that I had.
Oh, fantastic.
Nice.
And he told me that, if you had to come back, kids make you feel young. So we built a house for them next to ours. And he was my kid's baseball coach. He did all these things that he never got to do full time when he was working. But he really believed, because his job was so stressful, that stress created a disease within him. Dis-ease creates disease. Once, you know what I mean? And then once
you're not
he
wrong.
started to feel better, he was at ease, and his cancer went into remission, and it was just something that never happened. So he lived 8 years.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
So it ended up having a good outcome.
Well, I mean, some people will say to you, well, it's easy if you can see them all the time, if you're a psychic. I always try to tell people, like, life goes on. The vehicle stops working. The essence continues. And that's what makes up the individual. Did you have regular visits with your sister and your dad after their passing? Like, was it easier for you to, so a little easier to transition?
I think, I really thought, Michelle, that it would be easy for me more with my dad. Because I had lived away from my sister for over a year. I hadn't seen her. And they were supposed to be moving anyway to California. And so I was like expecting them to be moved. So it was easier kind of just to think in my mind, just because, and just because you're a medium doesn't mean it doesn't kill you inside.
Right.
That it doesn't destroy you, that your friend is no longer in the present. You're still not hugging them. You're still not seeing them. I can't conjure somebody. I can't ask her, hey, show up right now so I can talk to you.
Yeah, it doesn't quite work that way.
Right, it doesn't work that way.
No.
So the pain is just like anybody else's would be, and I think that is a good thing because I can relate to what people feel when they lose someone that they love. And then when my dad finally passed, I was the one that walked in when he took his last breath.
Wow.
And I saw him sitting next to me. He was next to me. And my dad was 6'3", 6'2.5", he would say, but we all said he was 6'3". But he was very tall and he was very athletic. And he had shrunk because of the bone cancer. So he was like 5'10" when he died.
Wow.
And I think he was 54 when he passed away. But he was tall, he was slim, he was healthy, he was very young, and he had a basketball in his hands. And I looked at him and I said, and my mom had just walked in, and she saw me, and I said, "How you feel?" And he goes, "I feel great." I said, "Well, go play." And he walked into the closet, and that was it. He was gone. But
that's nice, though.
Yeah,
so
it was.
What do you tell people who because you have a lot of clients and you do a lot of well, you work with people on self-help and such. And what do you say when they're looking for those answers? Because that is, I think, the question. What happens next? People fear death. Some people fear death, some don't. But I think it's what comes next that frightens people. And in your experience, having it gone through this experience, what do you tell people? What is it, or is it different for everyone?
No, I actually I can only say from my own experience, and there are other mediums that may see different things, but from what I have seen, all souls go to the light. It may be a different form, levels is what they call it, that I've been told.
Right.
But they all go into the light, and the first thing that they, for like my father, his body was still functioning, but the soul was pulled out. So that was one thing. It was important and imperative that I tell my clients. He said, let them know that when it looks like we're suffering and in pain and it's close to the end, actually we're not there anymore. It's a gift from the other side. They pull us out. They bring us back into the light we came from, where we were born knowing everything since time began. We're our wisest when we come in and just before we go back. And once we're in that light, he said, all memory returns. We take the lessons. We don't take negative. You take the lesson that might have been negative, but you can't take that to the other side because it doesn't exist there.
Right. Yeah, it's like trying to take baggage, I guess.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Yes. There isn't any. It's every time you go back, it's a new beginning. But yet you reunite with, to me, every soul on the other side is family. There is no breaking down of race, religion, creed, color. We just don't have that over there. That's it's a human trait. It's just not, for me anyway, that's what I have always been told and what I believe. And again, it could be a variant of what other people think or believe. But, I'm not one to tell people, don't be this, or don't be Catholic, don't be Protestant, don't be Buddhist. No, be whatever makes you comfortable and makes you have a good life. The afterlife is for everyone.
Well, we say we're like beings of light on a human journey. It knows no creed. It knows no religion. I think the cruel thing about all this is like all these memories come back when you get over there. But then, they pop you back over here and take it all from you again. So it's like, well, you're going to learn a lesson. Well, how? I don't even freaking remember what I did wrong.
Well, I know. See, I get that too. And that's the thing too, is that what they tell me is that, you're there for a time and you put together the pieces. You're looking at your past. You're looking at what you've done, what you haven't done, who you've been, who you haven't been. What experiences have you not gone through that you could put in to play right now? Do you want to live a short life? Do you want to just get one big thing done, or do you want to be there for a while? And so that's how they each soul perceives what they've gone through. What can I do next? And what karma can I clear? Do I have something to clear with somebody? Do I have something I need to finish? Or is there something I want to pursue with another soul that I've known? So we all take on different roles. I mean, what are you going to learn if you come back as the mother every time? Nothing, except you're the mother. You have to be everyone and walk in every shoe to literally understand what it's like to be that person.
But there are people who go through I just want to clarify this just for people who
Sure.
always wonder. There are people who go through some pretty horrific
Oh yeah.
experiences,
Sure.
like let's face it, dying horrifically in an accident, or having someone you love be murdered, or how about being the murderer yourself? Like, to think that we plan this out for ourselves, it's like, what was I thinking?
Well, and just to clarify,
Mhm.
no one can plan to come here to kill somebody.
Right.
That's just not how it works.
You
That's
just
a
get
humanity
sidetracked.
thing. People have a difficult time looking at you are a spiritual being living a human existence,
Right.
but recognize what you really are.
Mhm.
Listen to your intuition. But you know this, Michelle
Yes.
and Amelia. The minute you're born, humanity is pummeling you with information. Black, white, this religion, that religion, this is what you're supposed to believe. There is no beige, there is no gray. You are told what to think and to do.
Mhm.
Even if your intuition is telling you, but I don't believe that. I don't think that's right. You're going to be you're constantly bombarded with, I'm sorry, but this is how it is. So I don't believe people come back with an intent to harm. I think that's humanity that got lost, stopped listening, and made a tragic mistake.
See,
And
that makes sense.
Yeah,
because that's another one of those. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, see, that's another one of those questions that you hear a lot.
Right.
You know?
I mean, I don't believe people. I know what heaven is supposed to be, and if it's all love, compassion, patience, tolerance, and non-judgment, and only you, when you cross over, can judge your life. No one else can judge for you. You judge it, and then you decide, okay, how well did I do? And that goes into your record as to what will I go back to do, should I choose to. And again, that's a choice. Everything is a choice. You are not forced to come back here. Never.
Again, interesting, because this is what I guess religion does, because it is so regimented, and we are taught from the time we are little enough to comprehend. And I think, do you think this is why maybe souls get lost or grounded, and with the fear of, oh geez, I did this deadly sin, I'm going to hell, I'll take my chances and stay here, kind of thing. Do you think it's religion that does this to people? I mean, and I'm not being like all anti-religious religion people.
No.
So,
I understand what you're saying.
Completely. Oh no, but I mean, I'm going to get emails, so I'm just saying.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to point out the obvious with some things, because everything, we have government, we have religion, there are rules everywhere, and we're taught those rules from a very young age. And does that hinder in the end?
And the thing is, I'm just going to say it outright. Those rules are incorrect. And I can get all the emails. Don't send in Michelle,
send
you send in
Vicki
me,
the
and
emails.
that's fine. I'm just saying that
that's Dr. Vicki Monroe.
Yeah, Vicki Monroe at VickiMonroe.com. Okay.
I'm off the hook.
Yes.
Thank you.
You can tell she's used to them.
Yeah, but what I was going to say, what a very interesting soul told me once, it said, it's not so much that you have a religious faith, but that you have faith. That's all that matters. So having faith, deep within inside every single individual, you have a soul. And that soul never goes wrong. It's not evil. It's not dark. It is always trying to guide you in the right direction. But for some, life can be very difficult. And the life that you chose, even if you chose for it to be difficult, you thought, I'm going to get through it this time, and I'm going to come out stronger and better. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. And we lose our way. And does your soul still go to heaven? Of course it does. And I don't believe in hell. I'm told it doesn't exist. Hell is a definition that is created here, that the living creates for themselves. And it is not something that we would go to. So, no, I don't believe in hell. And if I get emails for that, so be it.
Send it to Vicki.
Bring it on, people. I'd rather not, but I just like to reassure people.
There's always that
those
delete
that
button.
The other side say there is not one.
So. You can always hit delete. You don't have to read it.
That's right.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Oh my God.
Delete. I'll be on permanent delete tomorrow, but
That's right.
Yeah. Or in an hour. Depends when you're checking them.
Yeah.
It's just, it's, and again, I'm not telling people they have to believe what I am saying, but I am just telling you from everything that I have learned and known and seen throughout my life, people don't need to fear the other side or fear if you make a mistake. A mistake is a lesson. Don't keep repeating it. That's when you waste time.
Mm-hmm.
Don't waste time.
Mm-hmm.
A mistake can be a really good lesson for you if you can take that forward and help somebody else maybe in the long run by not making that mistake. But everybody makes mistakes. That's a part of human nature. We are two sides. You have a spirit, and then you live in a human body.
That's right.
But don't be completely blindsided and think everything is for humanity, living through the human eyes. Feel it through your instinct. Your soul resides in your gut. Listen to it. If you're going left every day to work and suddenly you feel like you should go right, go right. There's a reason. And that's when we say, and how often do we feel this way? See, I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have done that. I felt like I should. Well, there you go.
I think sometimes life gets busy sometimes. I think people just don't see the signs. They don't acknowledge the signs because you're purposely kept busy. We don't slow down.
Existence. We have to live a human life, and that's what we're doing.
That's right.
We're also conditioned a certain way. Yeah, routine is a conditioning.
Exactly.
To stray from routine seems off, and it's the way you're raised as well. Like I'm always grateful that I was raised by two people who were old souls. That makes a big difference too.
Yeah.
But it makes a difference on how you view life. And did you have that aha moment in your life in your early 20s?
Yeah, I did. And I think that the aha moment for me was with my sister. It just was. I mean, it made everything perfectly clear because I know what I had been seeing all this time and feeling and, feeling spirits around me, talking to them and all that, but never somebody telling me or validating what I was saying. I kept it within myself like, you kook, you're just a nutcase. And instead, when she showed up and then clarified everything, absolutely everything that I had seen, everything that I believed, she clarified it for me. And then when my father passed, he did the same. And that's when, it just started this overflow of holy moly. They're everywhere. In the grocery store, when I'm going, for a run or whatever I'm doing, they are right there. And it's not like, they look awful. They look fantastic.
And they don't miss a beat.
You're the one that sees us, right? How you doing? That's how it works. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. No, it's true. It's true.
It is.
And they don't miss a beat, trying to make people realize that when someone moves on, that they're still very well aware of all those special occasions and, everything that you're doing. And they intervene at times when they need to. People just need to pay attention. Amelia and I had worked on a case last week, and the young man was a suicide. And we said, well, he will, I spoke, to the individual the next day. And I said, I think you really just need to watch for smells. And I'll tell you, validations, which is great. But she goes, I could smell cinnamon. And I was running around the house trying to figure out what it was, just because he loved to bake. I'm like, hello. She goes, I don't know how I even missed that. I'm just like,
he was a beautiful soul. He was a beautiful soul.
Sure.
I felt grateful just to be able to speak to him. Yeah.
Yes. So, that's what I'm saying was sometimes it's the obvious, hidden in plain sight. And it's just, we all need to slow down long enough to just pay attention.
Right.
And it would open up a whole other world for so many people.
It does. And it's funny because we're so busy and we're always, talking really fast and we're doing things very quickly. We're always constantly move. And I remember somebody had said to me, and it was, I don't even know who the spirit was, but I was doing a session for somebody, and they said, take a breath. And they were talking to me because I'm trying to get all the information, because there was like 6 different spirits in the room talking to this one person that I was trying to relay messages to. And this man had said, listen and silent have the same letters.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And
I never
like,
see. That's something for me. I never stop long enough to
You've
actually.
never seen. Yeah, it's very cool. It's very profound when you're told, just like now, or you see it.
Like
I saw it online somewhere, and I went, "Oh, good Lord, I need to practice this more often."
Process it, and so I just sat there, and it's interesting because not a lot of people listen. We're listening to talk. We're listening to make a statement. We listen long enough. We want to make something. We want to say something else instead of just simply listening and then waiting for somebody to ask if we actually want to make a comment. Sometimes people just need us to listen, and it's. I think I learned that more from those on the other side than I have from just my everyday family. You know, I just listen more. I listen more to my grandchildren now. I think I did more than I listened to my kids, because when you're a mom, you're just so busy, running, taking them everywhere. You know, it's insanity. But I listen more to my grandchildren because I can actually slow it down.
They're always a visit. Your kids are there, and you have a house, and you have everything. You make time for your grandkids.
And they're doing the running around, and all you get to do is just sit there and relish
all the best stuff.
Their presence.
And it's lovely, by the way.
Oh, it is.
Much better. Yes.
Absolutely is. Do you feel, you've made a point of saying that you feel invaluable? Do you feel like you have some sort of limitations?
Do I feel like I have what? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Any limitations? I'm infallible. No one is.
No, right.
What do you feel are your limitations?
Oh, gosh. I think I have more than I can even say.
Right.
I think my limitations are that at times, I've been doing this for so long that I've met certain people that will make me question myself. Am I actually feeling and seeing what I'm seeing? But then the test there goes to, do you believe that your sister and father were here? Well, yeah, I do. And I know what they told me, and I know the things that have come to fruition because of what they've said. But I think everybody has a fear. There's things that we can't control. And, I think I have a fear of the same things that everybody else has. I don't have all the answers. I never will have all the answers. I'm living this life out just like everybody else. I know some things because I've been told, because I listened and I was silent. I'm going to throw that in there. But I just, that's how I learn. I mean, I can go to bed at night and lay there, and I feel there are times when I go to bed at night, I'm afraid. I don't know who's going to be in my room at night. I don't know. I've seen so many different souls, and sometimes, when they're very dark in shape, they're not, I realize they're not there to hurt me or anything. That's the image that they took on. But I can be scared, and I don't have all the answers. And people think that because I see and feel what I do, that I don't grieve, that I don't have sadness, that I don't have pain. Well, you can't. Must be nice because you don't have to feel all this stuff. Well, but that's not true. I feel just as much pain when I lose my dog as anybody else. Or my parents,
absolutely.
I love all of these people just like everybody else does, and it's. I don't know. I have a lot of stuff. I have a lot of baggage, so there's a lot of things.
You're human.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I still am doing the human thing just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And
do you feel some?
I still think. Go ahead.
No, sorry. No. You please finish.
No, I was just going to say, people will ask me, does everybody have a gift? I think they do. I just think some people are strong enough to hang on to it through all the, talking to when you're born, and others just, take it all in, and then they just take it and go with it, But I do believe everybody's born with something. And sometimes I think you can get that back by just, working on yourself, the inner self. I think everybody has something, and everybody can contribute something.
I think you're right.
Have courage and be kind. That's the number one thing.
Mm-hmm. Note to self: stop being volatile.
Yeah.
Only when you're driving. You're never volatile unless you're behind a wheel. She's only volatile behind a wheel.
And you see him in the back seat, right?
Oh my gosh.
That's fun.
No, she's volatile because she's
driving.
Road rage.
Road rage. I have to listen to. I gotta listen to chanting or something just to keep me.
I just wave.
And you're one of the calmest people I know.
That's how you do it, and then I just keep going.
I always tell my daughter, don't ever give any driver the finger, because you don't know who's behind that car. You could be related to them. I said, so don't.
So true.
She goes, no, I just swear inside the car.
I just wave now. Sorry, even if it wasn't me. Not worth it.
Oh yeah.
Pick your battles and pick wisely, because most battles are
some people are just too ridiculous, and you just never know what's going to happen. So it's better to be safe than sorry, and always let someone else have the way. Don't take a chance. That's how people pass away. That's how people get killed. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I like to do it when I'm by myself. I realize at an early age, when you do it with people in the car, my big thing was, oh, stupid idiot. And then my 3-year-old one day goes, stupid Indian, right, Mom? And I'm going, oh my gosh, what did you just say? It's like, no, honey, not an Indian. Mommy said an idiot, and I'm sorry. And I realized the little ears were listening. And I learned at that point, rage to yourself when you're by yourself, and just, my kids are
let it go.
You have your 3-year-old in the back shaking their fist.
You could be Elsa when you're driving by yourself.
I know.
Sing as loud as you want to.
Yeah, without a 3-year-old shaking their fist at you, it's like
exactly.
That's right.
It's great.
So funny.
Oh my God.
I wanted to ask you, having recently lost my dad, I found that sometimes, and I lost. It's okay. Thank you. He lived a long, beautiful life.
Wonderful.
I was very blessed because I got to be there. There was just so many blessings in this one. I'm grateful for it. I lost my brother when I was 33, so I understand what it's like. He was my best friend. I understand what it's like to lose that. I lost my mom when I was 27. What I find with loss with a medium, and I'm curious about your feelings on this, is that often you will be dismissed because you're gifted. They'll treat you differently because, but you're so fortunate because you can just talk to them anytime. Do you feel that kind of like, well, give me a second, I'm grieving, I'm still human.
Yeah.
I need to heal.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You need time just like anybody else does. And you do feel that isolation, that not being included in, a group of, like, if my family was grieving, they recently lost, my sister-in-law passed away. And it was very hard because she was very young. And it's really hard. And they didn't. It was just I'm not even going to get into that, but it was just very, very difficult. And for her girls and my brother, it was so hard. But thankfully, they're all doing really, really well. And they're a wonderful family. But it's just, when you lose somebody and you do what you do, I've just noticed even when friends lose somebody, they look at you and they're like, well, what do you know? You don't, you see this stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't understand. But I do understand, it's very hard. I mean, how did you feel, Amelia? I mean, did you feel like the rest of your family just kind of let you grieve on your own? Or, I mean,
or do you feel my brothers were really good with me, surprisingly. And I hope you're not listening, guys, but yes, they were really good with me. Yeah. I found friends, and they're probably watching. I found them to be a bit difficult at times, but there's a few people who are sadly no longer in my life. being difficult in the sense that, well, you've got this. And I'm like, I still experience what you experienced.
Exactly.
The passing part was different because I could see everything before it came. So that was different. But
you had a wonderful experience, though.
I had a wonderful experience with him, but not my brother. My brother passed away suddenly, and I was very angry for a long time. So and I shut down everything. I was angry when my mom passed away too, because I was expecting a baby, and 5 months later I lost that baby. So I was it was a tough year. I lost a lot of people. I lost an uncle, my godfather, all within May to September. And it made me hard and shut down. And but I'm grateful for the experiences, not the way the deaths happen, of course. I'm grateful for the experience, and I know that I chose this somehow, because it helps me. Yes, they did. And it helps me do what I do, and it helps me help other people. It helps me recognize that. So I'm grateful for it. But, I think people have to be a little bit kinder to mediums when they lose someone, because yes, we can, but we also can't just say, hey, come forward, I need to talk to you. It doesn't happen like that either.
Exactly.
So it's
that's very, very true. No, I know. I totally understand what you're saying. And it can be very hard. And, I just try to tell people, well, why would they, like they said with my sister, why would she choose to be in a terrible car crash? Why would she die so tragically? And I asked her, I said, why so tragically? And she said, tragically, I didn't feel it. It was boom, done. We were in the car. I was standing outside the car when it got hit. I didn't feel anything. All I saw that light, and there we were. And she said the wonderful thing, and this is so, I swear, I do a lot of live events, and I can be talking to people and prepping them about what to expect and all that. And the minute I tell them the first thing you see when you cross over is a pet, that's when they're like, oh, really? All the other things you could tell them to be reassuring, but the animal, that's it. That's the key. That's the kicker. They just are thrilled to death that their cat, their snake, their goldfish is going to meet them first, in that light. And that animals always look about 8 weeks old and forever young. And, and souls too look about 16 to 24, even though when they show themselves to us, they can look like they did when they crossed, but they were healthy. They never look sick or, disfigured or anything like that. They always look wonderful. No. And that's another thing that people are, they limit themselves from seeing in dreams because they're afraid they're going to look sickly, like they did when they were ill, when they just prior to passing or when they passed away. But they don't look that way. They'll show themselves to you in a way you recognize them and they were healthy. So you'll be happy to see them, because the last thing they want to do, and it's what I relay all the time, is they don't want to scare you. They just want you to know they're okay. And that's how they do it.
Have you ever come across grounded spirits in your reads or in your talks when you're doing the group tours?
I've never met a ground. Yeah, I can honestly tell you, Amelia, I have never met a grounded spirit. I'm told that they don't linger here. Why would they if they can go to heaven? But I do know that they visit here, and sometimes like on anniversaries or times in history that they were prevalent in their life, they will come back and they will be here for that time. But I have never met a soul that just wants to stay here because heaven's waiting for them. And this unfinished business, well, I've been told that no one can leave here, whether even if it's suicide, until the year, the day, the month, the time. It is all planned. So a grounded, yes, there may be differences, and it may just be because that's just something I'm not aware of in my own practice. I'm not aware of it. I've never in 35 years witnessed a grounded spirit. Have I met some that are visiting and they're here for a month or two? Yep, I have. But I haven't met someone that's like stuck here.
That's interesting because
I've met other mediums that have. I never have.
Absolutely. Not so much always because of unfinished business as it is sometimes they just don't know they've passed on, or maybe they're attached to something and they're not willing to let go of that attachment.
Children are often grounded.
To me, it makes perfect sense. I've just never met one.
Wow.
I never have.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating.
I can honestly say,
maybe
never have I met one. Never have I ever.
You know what? I feel with your story, your experiences, your life, that you were brought here just to work with light, and that may be the reason why you don't see grounded, which is a beautiful thing, by the way.
I'm glad, honestly, because I really don't know what I would do.
Yes.
I don't even honestly.
Well, you'd find Michelle like I did.
Yeah, I'm not even
you'd
sure.
Find Michelle. Yeah.
I work
grateful. I think it's beautiful that you don't have to.
Oh, I'm glad. Apparently, I'm even more happy right now. But I mean, it's not that I haven't. I've worked on cases where I've gone through cemeteries, and honestly, seen people meandering about that weren't living. But I remember seeing one man that was just like, "Why are these plastic flowers on my grave? I don't deserve a daffodil or a tulip. They come up every year, you know." But he wasn't grounded. You know what I mean? He was just perturbed.
I love that. I would love to see more spirits like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just interesting, you know, and I remember being at the grocery store and the produce, there was one guy that apparently he had passed and I didn't know, but I thought he was working, and then he turned around and he said hi, and he looked like he was a grocery store worker from the 1800s who must have owned a little shop or something, and he couldn't believe that the produce looked the way it did. Why isn't this is not correct. We need to fix this. So I'm just like, okay. It just kept right on going.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. It would make you wonder why they care.
I know. And I think it's just a memory that I feel like we have soul memory. And it's like when you go somewhere. I mean, you guys must know you have dreams where you just want to, there's a country that you just can't, you just dying to go visit.
Mm-hmm.
It just pulls at your soul. Well, I believe you lived there once. That's what that draw is.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also believe there are places that repulse us, that just like, no, I will never go there. You could give me $1 million and I would not go there. Well, you didn't have a good life there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's why you meet certain people that you're instantly attached to,
mm-hmm.
and others that you're not. I just don't think these things are put there by accident. I believe all things happen for a purpose, and there's a lesson there, you know, to be found. I think sometimes we search too hard for lessons, but that's what I think. I mean, it can go right down to describing, you know, these little kids that are born. Like there was a little boy here in Maine years ago, whose dad, he was 2, and his dad sat down and started playing the piano. And the little boy got up on the piano and played the exact song.
Wow.
And it wasn't amazing. It's not a gift. It's a memory.
It's a memory.
That's the gift. The soul remembers everything.
Yes.
If you allow it, if you're quiet and you allow it, you can see it. It's why we do certain things that we're just naturally good at. Well, I don't know where they got that. It must be a gift. Yeah, it's a gift. It's a memory.
Mm-hmm.
Your soul has lived hundreds of lifetimes, and it remembers them all.
Yeah, it's just the human
it'll
brain.
show you.
Yeah,
Right.
the human brain can't compute and bring all the memories in.
Exactly.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. We have to do a quick station ID. Miss Amelia.
Yes.
Thank you.
That would be me. You're currently listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano and our special guest, Dr. Vicki Monroe, on 107.7 FM and 105.3 FM in New Orleans on United Public Radio. And this broadcast is partially sponsored by Folgers Coffee. Thank you, Folgers.
Yeah, so we do have a special guest joining in, and we're just going to wait for Joe to bring her on. But Laura DiDio is going to be joining us. Whoo! Yes, we love Laura. We do. She's a sweetie. I told her I says you need to behave yourself because you're on in 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
We don't want everything out tonight. We need you to
She's like,
for 2 hours.
Worry. I've got lots to talk about, she said. It's like, all right, I'm going to take your word on that. So,
hello, this is Laura.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Laura Di Dio. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Where are things like out your neck of the woods over there? Are you still in COVID jail like us up here in Canada?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's getting, it gets on everybody's nerves. I go to the grocery store, the post office, and the recycling place with my garbage, and that's about it.
Well, that's
sometimes I just
fancy,
take a
Laura.
drive around the neighborhood in my car. Just
that's fancy, Laura. I don't get to the recycling place. I get to the end of my driveway. That's it.
I know. Well.
Oh my gosh. So you two are like compadres, and how did you two connect?
Well,
Go ahead, Laura.
The usual way that you connect with a psychic, in this case, back in 2001, I was up in Maine. My family has always had a summer place in Maine. That was my great aunt and uncle's cow pasture, by the way. And my mom had passed away in April, and in early July, I was up there and I was reading the Sunday Portland Press Herald, and there was this big article about Vicki Monroe. The title was "What She Sees in You." And like many people, when you lose a loved one, no matter how close you are to them and how much you communicate and talk to them prior to their passing, there's never enough time. Yes, there's always something left unsaid. So I called Vicki's office to make an appointment for a reading, and I was told she was booked a year in advance. Okay,
so I guess you're waiting.
Yeah, so I basically tabled that, and then for about a year or so, whatever, and I called back and got the reading and went to her office in Kennebunkport. And I will never forget this because she came out of the office and she was sharing space at the time with this, I guess it was a shop, that sold crystals and different things. Right. And she came out and she's about my height, and I remember what she was wearing.
God, I don't. Okay.
You actually had on sandals that had daisies on the top of them.
Oh, okay.
Okay, they were open sandals, and she came out and she shook my hand, and I'll never forget this. I'm saying, boy, but she was looking down and to the side, and I'm saying, wow, she's really not that friendly. Well, it wasn't brusque or anything like that. It just seemed to be very businesslike, but she seemed a little distracted, and she was looking off to the side, and I would later find out what that meant, that she sees things that most of the rest of us do not. So we went into her office, and my butt didn't even hit the seat of the chair. And it was like she started, getting these huge downloads of information from my people. Yeah. And I will never forget this because I'm a reporter, an investigative reporter, and I do know that when people go to see psychics, tarot card readers, whatever, let's face it, you've got, about 5 or 6 on the hot topic list. Money, health, love, relationships.
Finance. Yeah, finance is always at the top.
Etc.
And who am I marrying?
Yeah, most people can figure that out. In fact, there was a big scandal about 20 years ago that the New York City Department of Welfare was actually giving informal courses to the people on welfare to tell them how to become psychics so that they could get jobs on the Psychic Friends Network. I don't even know if that's still in
Wow.
Good Lord. Wow. Are you serious? How did I miss that?
I'm serious. This was in the New York. This was written up in the New York Times.
That's how. Was it in Toronto?
Yes. So essentially, it's very easy to lead people, and Vicki has always been very adamant that she doesn't say, hey, don't ask me when I'm going to meet my dream man or woman or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do that sort of thing.
No.
But I was determined that I would approach this reading as a reporter and basically not feed her things, but ask some specific questions. So my parents showed up, and of course I had a lot of things to say, a lot of unfinished things to say to my mother, but it was funny. The communication really, really started immediately, and she would say things like, who's Billy? Billy. And he has Harley Davidson motorcycles. I'm like, okay, well, that was my parents' next door neighbor who rented out their garage, and he had classic Harley Davidson motorcycles. And then I said, but I wanted to ask her some specific things again. And I said, well, where are my animals? I didn't specify what types of animals. She says, oh, it's all dogs, all black dogs. And she said, they're right here with your parents. I said, oh, okay. And I said, how many are there? So Vicki put her index finger in the air, and when you're counting things,
Mm-hmm.
and she did that, and she's, I count 6. And I said, what are their names? And I swear to God, nothing could prepare me for this. With no hesitation, the name Mickey just flew off her lips. And she's Mickey. She says, Teddy, no, Freddie. And then she said, Fritz, Franz. And then she said, Rimmel, what do you mean? And she was stumbling over this name. And again, she's looking off to the side as though there's somebody there that I can't see. And she's
And those are unusual names. Like, they're not just like Fido,
No.
or Spot.
Well, wait, the story actually gets better. So she says, okay. And then she says, what do you mean elongate the word? And she's talking to this unseen person who was one of my parents. I knew later it was my mother, because she said, yeah, it has like 3 syllables, like the perfume that was on my dresser. Replique. Like, okay. And anyway, she named them all, but what Vicki didn't know, and that only I could know, and don't forget, this is going back now 17, 18 years, where you didn't have Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram and social media. So none of these dogs were on the internet, or my social media accounts. There were no pictures of them there. What Vicki did not know, and that was so extraordinary, was that she had named my dogs from the first to the last, the most recent death. That first dog, Mickey, was the dog that my parents got as a puppy when my mother was pregnant with me. The dog had been dead over 40 years at that point. So, yes, there are unusual names. How do you do that?
Yeah. Oh, and funny, I don't remember, she tells me this story all the time. And I remember sitting there pointing to them, but I couldn't, she tells me the names, and it's been so long, I forget. But
you release everything too, so that you're able to move forward.
You just let it go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But
otherwise, Vicki's head would explode.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, you would.
Yeah.
Lose it. Yeah. But it was.
No, I was so taken by this reading. I'm saying, and I have worked, and I know that we've talked about this before. I've been involved in paranormal investigations and working with various psychics from very early on in my career. From when I had a radio show at Fordham when I was just, 19 years old. And being born and raised in New York and living in other big cities as well, I've had a chance to, interview and work with some of the top names in the business. I mean, everyone from Uri Geller, and as far as mediums go, Lorraine Warren, who of course I worked with, she and her husband Ed, on the Amityville case, and also in the Conjuring house with the Perrons in Rhode Island. Hans Holzer. And Hans worked with two very gifted psychics, the late Ethel Johnson Myers and Sybil Leek, who was a Wiccan, a white witch.
White witch, yeah.
And the psychics, as you all know, because you're all very gifted, it's like saying, oh, somebody's a basketball player or a football player or a musician. Well, what instrument do you play? What position do you play? So the psychics and their talents and their specialties are as varied as, the types of musical instruments you can play. Or it's like saying, so it's different. So Lorraine Warren was what she called herself, a light trance medium, meaning that she didn't go into a full unconscious, different state, but she was always aware of what was going on. Ethel Johnson Myers and Sybil Leek were both deep trance mediums. Vicki is not her abilities. Vicki calls herself a spirit messenger, meant to give guidance, but she's in reality a very powerfully gifted psychic. And I joke, I said to Vicki, well, I've never seen you go into a trance. That's not your thing. I said, except I guess if day-to-day living and chores, with 4 kids, 5 grandchildren, husband, animals, farm, full-time job, that could turn you into a walking zombie.
Yes, it can.
But Vicki is one of those folks that you see on depicted on TV shows like Medium, who can actually see, hear, and converse with departed loved ones, and also spirits who have not been in corporeal form, which is why she is often looking off to the side and, gets a, otherworldly look about her. And apparently, from what I've seen in talking to other, very gifted psychics, is that the spirits and of just spirits, angels, whatever you want to call them, and spirits of, deceased persons are very attracted to folks like all of you, because you can see and hear them and speak to them or what have you in the way that most of us can't.
Yeah.
And that manifests itself. So when I left that day from that first reading with Vicki, I was really quite impressed. And so I made another appointment and went back. And I have to say, it's very cathartic, because I had some things I wanted to say to my mom, yell at her.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. No, it's all good.
That must have been different for Vicki. Usually people are coming grieving, and they really want to connect, and you're like, I got a few things on my mind for my mom. Can you bring her forward?
and by the way, that
doesn't
happen. Vicki doesn't actually call them forward. One of the things that I say, because I'm in the process, and Vicki and I have been in the process over the past 10 years, believe it or not, of writing her biography, is that she's a conduit. Okay, she facilitates these conversations. She is not a conjurer. Vicki doesn't have bell, book, and candle and sit there and do incantations and,
no, doesn't work.
Call people forward. It's whoever it's who might show up, and it's very interesting. So the second reading was just as eye-opening and compelling as the first. And there's no way that Vicki could have known these people. So, for example, I'm half Irish, and my grandmother was born in Ireland, and she showed up in one of the readings. And what also amazed me in doing these discussions is that these folks move around. They don't necessarily travel with the same partners all the time. So my grandmother, who was with my grandfather in one reading, ended up traveling with her sisters in another reading, and in order to let me know that it was really her, she said, "Oh, tell your cousin Mary that her little girl is here with us." And I have at least 5 or 6 cousin Mary on both sides of my family tree. Irish and Italian. But since you were the Irish,
I do too. Yes.
Like lovely.
The Irish.
Yeah. Mary, Joe.
Exactly. But then since this was the Irish branch of the tree, I knew immediately when they said the little girl, because my one cousin Mary had lost her daughter at the age of only a year and a half to the little girl died of congenital heart defect.
Oh.
I mean, again, that is not something that you just, that you could look up on the internet.
You can't fish for that information. No.
Exactly. But the other thing that impressed me about Vicki was that she only wants to know your first name. And she actually says, "Don't tell me anything. I want to be able to get it." And the cynics among us, and everyone who's on this call, and many of the listeners know that, the field of the paranormal is rife with charlatans.
Yes.
And fakes.
Yes. Just tell it like it is, Laura. Just throw it right out there.
Right?
Even more so in the last few years.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And the number of people who are now self-styled paranormal investigators.
Oh God.
Is
Amelia, that's what I say.
Just because you are doesn't mean you should be. That's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
So I kept talking to Vicki, and I wanted to explore this gift, and I'm like, how is it that I wanted to know the mechanics about it? How is it that she does what she does, and how do you keep it at bay? So we kept talking, and we actually became friends. And then what happened was that the reporter in me always wanted, I said, okay, I wanted to test her, to test the power. So I would set up a reading with Vicki, with somebody I knew. I would just throw this person at her.
Yeah.
And one person that I threw at her just at the last minute, she had no idea we were on the phone, and I conferenced this person is Eric Walter. Eric Walter was the director, the writer, and the executive producer of the documentary My Amityville Horror that I had worked on with him as a co-producer and also the on-air reporter. And Eric at the time was in his late 20s, and he's sort of a skeptic about the afterlife, God, etc. And I said, Vicki, what are you getting from Eric? I introduced them. I said, what are you picking up from Eric? And the most extraordinary thing came out. Again, this is not something that Vicki could find even if she had had any forewarning. She wouldn't have been able to find this out about Eric, who, from looking something up on the internet. She didn't have his last name, by the way, but she told Eric, hey, you were in a car accident about 10 years ago. And it was in the middle of the night, and your car went off the road, rolled over, and you had a serious head injury. Your grandfather wants you to know that he was the one who helped you get out of the car.
Yeah, I remember that.
And Eric, that in fact had happened. He did not remember. even going off the road. One minute he was driving, and the next thing he knew, he was walking on the side of the road. The car was in a ditch, but he doesn't remember what caused him to go off the road, how he got out of the car, or anything. I mean, he was just in a daze. So I'm like, wow. And I kept doing things like this that Vicki could not possibly know.
Well, I just remember the time that you called me, and she called me, in the middle, I don't know, it was in the morning or the middle of the day, I don't even remember, but she's like, okay, I'm reading a newspaper. She's got something online, and it's a newspaper. What was the town? It was in Texas, right? What was the town? Was it El Paso or Houston or something?
No, actually it was San Jose, California. I was reading the San Jose Mercury News because in my other life, I'm a high technology industry analyst, consultant, and reporter. So I was just reading this newspaper, and I saw this obituary. And I plucked the obituary out, and I called Vicki up, again, cold. And I said, this is going back to October 2009. And I said, hey, I'm reading this obituary here. This woman's name is Beverly. What do you get on this? And again, what's interesting is the way the information is being downloaded off a newspaper to me, to Vicki. So it's, sort of like a real life game of telephone, but, Earth to Vicki to Laura to the great beyond. So Vicki described this woman. She says, okay, she says, I see an older woman. She's got glasses. She says, gray to white hair. She says, her hairstyle looks like she has a bowl on her head. She has most of her teeth. And she said, I also see her in a nurse's outfit, uniform, where she's talking to people every day. I see teaching and medical, and I get that she was a religious person. And she said, well, this person has passed. She said, there was trauma. There was a head accident, and her heart gave out. And she said, etc. So I said, oh, and that's interesting. So what happened here was that this woman, her name was Beverly. She was in her early 60s, and she had been the victim of a freak accident. She was walking in a local park in near San Jose, and a man had been cycling by on his bicycle, and he had his Siberian Husky on a long leash, and the dog was running alongside of him. And this freakish accident happened because the dog's leash was so long, the man's on the bicycle, and this woman, Beverly, was walking on the side of the path, and her legs became wrapped up in the Husky's leash, and she tripped and hit her head. Now, the cyclist did stop to render aid. She was initially conscious after the fall, and she even spoke to the bicyclist until the paramedics came. But by the time they got her to the hospital, she must have lost consciousness and died. And it turns out she did have sort of like a Beatle haircut. She worked as a phlebotomist. And the other thing that Vicki saw that was unusual, she said she saw her with sort of unusual undergarments. And I'm not talking anything risque here,
Victoria's
but
Secret,
Let's clear that up.
actually very modest undergarments. Right. And it turns out that this lady was a Mormon, and she was wearing the traditional garments of undergarments of her Mormon faith.
Right.
So this was all just from a newspaper article. Vicki didn't know anything about this, including the woman's name, which she ended up giving to me. But the fact that she got this and gave me a description, and I still have the woman's, obituary, and the woman, did work as a phlebotomist, so she would have been wearing, taking blood from people, meeting people, greeting them every day in the medical profession. So the more and I've been testing Vicki, and Vicki has been very gracious because she's never said no or not gone along with it. And I've also... And
I've been wrong. Many times.
Here's the other thing, too. Nobody is infallible.
Of course not.
No.
I said that earlier.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Yeah, for sure.
I make mistakes, absolutely.
But her hit rate is, I would say, and I've interviewed people where Vicki has worked on the Q up in Portland, Maine.
The radio, yeah.
When she did the radio station or the radio show there, and I talked to the station manager and also some of the other people there, and I said, "Well, how do you think she does?" And the station manager said he rated her at 85 to 90%. And what was also interesting was he said there were always a number of skeptics who would get on, and Vicki was doing these, short readings, and they would say, "No, that's wrong. No, that's not right. Nope, nope, nope." And then they would call back after the show was over, and they talk to the station manager or the producer and say, I only told her that was wrong."
Oh, that's terrible because you're on the air, you know.
But some people, when you have call-in,
right, had called me one day. Oh, it was hilarious, and I'm reading, and it was about. I kept seeing what are those big dogs? What's that Beethoven dog? That was the kind of dog it was.
Irish Hound.
Yeah, thank you. And I saw so many of them, and I'm like, who the heck? Because when they call, just like you had said, Amelia and Michelle, they ask, who's around me? What? Just like you guys get, right? Yeah. And so I'd say, okay. And the woman that I did the show with, Meredith, she would always say, now, Vicki's can't tell you the future. She's only going to tell you what she sees. So I have like maybe 90 seconds with each caller. And I just kept seeing these dogs. And it wasn't even for this woman on the bus. It was the next caller. She'd go, I have the dogs. I have this.
Someone piggybacked rating on her reading.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
The bus driver was not happy with the she got, but it was for the woman. It was for the next woman.
But thank
God we got her.
It happens.
Sometimes with callers, too. What is really nasty is you can get people that come on just purposely to stump you, and they have no story, and they're just, but the best part is when you pick up on that,
right?
But we're all the same. We all have, we're all the same, where not everybody gets the reading, not everybody gets that person, right? It's understandable.
And sometimes it misfires. There was one classic example of this. A very dear close friend of mine who has since passed on. She was a colleague and she was a close friend. My friend Julie. Wanted, and she had 2 or 3 readings with Vicki. So I think it was the first reading, and she wanted to talk to her ex-husband who had passed on. And instead, what happened was Vicki, a neighbor lady from when Julie was a child showed up, and all these random people. And then when her ex-husband finally did show up, he was talking about how he was helping people on the other side with all of their problems. And she's like, what? Kids who are still here.
Yeah, that's a bit weird.
Yeah, I know. So she was, Julie was pretty upset about that. But, other times people, and I wanted to know the mechanics of how it is the psychically gifted do what they do. And in Vicki's case, watching her, and maybe Michelle, you and Amelia can chime in on how it's for you, how it works for you. But in Vicki's case, what it seems to me as the trained observer is that Vicki is like a big satellite transceiver, and she's able to get 250 channels. Okay. Most of the time it's clear channels, but when people are disappointed that they don't get the exact information that they want, or someone is withholding, I mean, I think you have to think, what happens when you go to a party or you're talking to somebody on a train, a plane, or a bus?
And you're not always meant to get the message. Just because people want them doesn't mean they're meant to get them. Do you have a question, Amelia, in the chat room?
Yes, in the chat room, Portland, Casey Brown. Vicki is extraordinary for sure. Has Vicki ever done a walkthrough of the Amityville house with Laura?
No, but that is something that we would like to do. I know Vicki's been fascinated by the case, and just let me tell you, with respect to Amityville, as everybody knows, there's a lot of controversy over whether this was made up, it's a hoax, whether or not anything happened, especially since subsequent people after the Lutzes have claimed publicly that nothing has been going on. You can have one person trigger that, an event, or, sort of be the one that, just like in the book, Stephen King's novel, The Shining, where these entities or whatever, demonic forces, or people who have passed on but don't know that they're gone and they're still hanging around because they're confused, are triggered or identified, by a person or persons. So the Amityville house seems to have been quiet, although there have been things that have gone on behind the scenes that, people don't want to talk about publicly. It could be triggered again, or it could just be dormant. Now, none of the paranormal investigators, from the Warrens to Hans Holzer to others, have ever, agreed on what exactly is happening. Hans Holzer said at the time, oh, it's a simple haunting. The Warrens felt that it was a demonic force. Somebody else said it was there were spirits there. Ethel Johnson Myers, when she went into her trance, she felt it was, it had been built on an Indian burial ground, and that there was a spirit of an Indian boy. His skull had been found by some local kids, and they were kicking his skull around. He was very upset about that. So I think there could be a lot of things there. It's just a trigger, but it would be interesting to have a very powerful psychic like Vicki go in and see.
Which brings me to my next question following that is, Vicki, have you gotten any impressions? I mean, most of the time you could just look at a location and get impressions without even there's nothing like being on site, of course, but have you gotten any impressions based on
Amityville?
Yeah.
I know everything that Laura has said to me, so I feel like I honestly don't feel anything in that place, but I've never been to that place. So for me, it's I have to be there. And I know what she said, and I know there are people that have run out of that house in absolute terror. So you can't dismiss what other people have felt. But I did go to the answer to the lady in Portland. I did go on an investigation to the original Conjuring house, which was fascinating.
Harrisville.
Yeah.
How was that?
That was fantastic. I loved it.
When did that happen? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Last February. I was there a year ago.
Yes.
And with Laura. I went with Laura. They were interviewing her because they were doing a doc film on the Warrens who investigated that house. And I brought my friend who's an empath and an intuitive and also is a psychic as well, Kim Brown. And we just sat quietly in the living room. And the house, honestly, has not changed for the most part since it was built in 17-something. And but I was honored because she asked me to go and just to take a walk through after they interviewed her, and never saw. I contradict the story. I will contradict that story all day long. It just did not happen from what I felt, from what my friend felt. The story that these people wrote for 10 years. They said that they were haunted, but they stayed there. Never saw anyone, never felt anyone. I saw a little boy there who was happy. He was upstairs, and I later found out that it had never been active for 20 years while this woman ran a daycare in that house up until the 80s. And she said the only terrible thing that ever happened there was when that movie came out and people kept driving into her driveway in the middle of the night, and she literally had to move.
That's so disrespectful.
Yeah. She never, ever had a single incident. And the other people that had lived there, never a single incident. I will say there were spirits there, yes. Nothing like what the books are. And I didn't know about the books, to be honest with you. I never saw the movie.
Right.
Until after the fact, when I went back and I'm like, it doesn't even look like that house. This is a little cape, which I loved. I loved the whole house. I would have stayed all night. I just loved it. It was just adorable. And but the one thing I did when I walked up the stairs, I felt this was a little classroom where the woman had been teaching and stuff, and there was a door behind it, and I did feel someone was in there. And I'm like, well, let's just go in. So I opened the door, and I did see a woman hanging there.
Wow.
And I asked the gentleman that had bought the house, who does the tours through it now, and the original owner, Mr. Roberts' wife, did kill herself. That was the original barn. But that was a part of the house.
Where you were standing, but also, Vicki, you also said you were standing in, this room, this little Eve type,
that bedroom.
Right off one of the bedrooms. Right. And Vicki said, "This is there's a lot of blood here. I see this." She said, "Oh, this was a birthing room."
Right, it was.
And she said, "Oh, I feel like people have died here. Both the women giving birth and as well as babies, which would make sense." And then that's when then after that you said, "Oh, okay, but there's something else."
Yeah, in the walls.
Somebody met a violent death, so that could have been the Bathsheba.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she wasn't involved though, Laura. She was not involved in this. That's all made up. I'm sorry. I'm not contradicting you. I love you to pieces, but that did not happen. I feel so sorry for that woman who was looked up, as far as from what I believe, by the women that wrote this story, this mother and daughter. Brought up. I mean, they've desecrated that poor woman's grave. I mean, and she was just blamed for things. I just believe they dug up something and made a story out of it and made money, and it just didn't happen. She was not involved in this.
Actually, Bathsheba was never blamed for anything. That was the writers of the film. The book, she was never blamed for anything. She was respected. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And there was some murky controversy there about, her death and,
Yeah. That whole film was
bogus.
Was completely bogus. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was.
I'll tell you what,
completely different.
I was very afraid in the Conjuring house because they hadn't done any repairs on it, and I was sure that and the floors were really weak and creaking. I was sure.
She's right.
I was going to go. I was going to put my floor away, and since I'm not petite like Vicki, Tinkerbell, I'm like, okay, this is it. I should have died before I came here. I'm going to die going through the floorboards.
That's true.
Well,
I mean,
what was
you
it
could see
built?
right to the
17
basement.
something, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's an
it
old,
was.
old farmhouse. Yeah.
Oh, it was. And the thing is, you could see around when you pulled onto the road in Harrisville, you could feel spirits everywhere. That's a very large Native American population. There are burial grounds out there. And there were Indian attacks in that area, because their land was being taken. And there was, when I looked out the window, that's what I saw. But it was like looking back in time and seeing there was a Native American community that lived back there. And that's something that I tend to get, is what happened in the past is still happening in the present, but that's their heaven. They're reenacting their lives in this place on the other side, but every now and then you get a glimpse of it.
Wow. And I'm sure you
It
get a
was
lot
very
of residual as well, like replays and imprints and
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We are coming pretty much to the end of the show. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to give each the opportunity to tell everybody how to find you. And Vicky, of course, we're going to start with you since we started with you.
Sure.
So tell everybody how to find you.
Well, they can go to my website, VickiMonroe.com. They can follow me on Facebook or Twitter. It's Vicki One Spirit. But I have monthly newsletters that I send out, but I also am working on in-person sessions, which I do on the weekends for people. And I do a lot of phone sessions, but my shows are just starting up again, my events in March, and I actually have one next Friday. So, yeah, everything's starting, and I'm working on some projects right now with Laura and with other venues. So it's very busy, but it's fun and it's rewarding, and I'm not really doing cold cases at this time. I am doing paranormal investigations and things like that, but not cold cases.
Well, we may have to bring you
take a lot of time
back again and cover some of the stuff that we missed tonight. I think it would be it'd be a lot of fun. Laura,
it's such an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, it was
Thank you for being
pleasure.
here. It was fun. We have so much more to talk about.
Absolutely. We'll definitely do it again. I'll be in touch. And Laura, how's everybody going to find you? Well, aside from, coming back March 3rd, and Laura will be with us again. Why don't you just, plug something, girl, and tell everybody how to find you?
Sure. Well, you can find me. I'm on social media. So I'm on Twitter, at Laura DiDio, and my email, I'm pretty easy to find, LDidio, DIDIO 14 at Verizon.net. And I sort of hide in plain sight. I mean, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. So yeah, you'll find me. Yeah. So I'm working on Vicky's book, The Conduit, which we're going to finish. And also working on a book about Amityville with Marvin Scott, who was the reporter on the case. In fact, Marvin and I were just talking about that this past weekend. He thinks nothing happened there. And that's his story, and he's sticking to it.
Okay.
Good for him. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I'm glad you can sleep.
Yeah, thank you both for joining us, Laura. Thanks for coming on and telling us a few awesome Vicki stories. And we'll be seeing you next month. And Vicki, you will be hearing from me. I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you,
Thank
ladies.
You, ladies.
Have a great weekend. Stay safe and well.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, we've come to an awesome segment of the Outer Realm. So a little surprise there with Laura DiDio joining in. Thank you all for tuning in. And of course, to our special guest, Vicki Monroe. So delightful. I really enjoyed having her on. And Laura is always a pleasure. Thank you to Joe for working that magic behind the scenes. So, of course, we want to extend a huge thank you to our sponsors, Folgers Coffee, for partially sponsoring tonight's show. We love you. We appreciate your support. And remember, guys, stop by the United Public Radio YouTube channel and subscribe. Don't forget about us on the Outer Realm Facebook page and Instagram if you'd like to drop us a line. If you have a specific guest or topic you'd like to see on the show, email us at theouterrealmcontact@gmail.com. Again, theouterrealmcontact@gmail.com, or drop us a line on the Facebook page. Please tune in next week as we welcome 2 more amazing guests. Wednesday night is our UK guest, Steve Burgess, who will be coming on to the show. Thursday, we have a returning guest, Bill Bean, who's always got interesting things to talk about. So one hell of a lineup. So until then, Amelia and I thank you. Oh, and I can't forget, wait, before I say goodnight, don't forget to join Joe Montaldo and I on the Gray Zone Uncensored this Saturday, 5 to 7 Central, 6 to 8 Eastern. That's really going to be a good show. Wait till you see what I cooked up for you guys. Anyway, until then, Amelia and I say thank you. Have a good night. Have a fantastic, safe weekend, and we will see you next week. Good night.